hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you as well.
Yay.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt and
Sonia
others.
is in as a attendee if we want to promote her to a panelist.
All right. Yep. Give me a second. All right. Well, sorry for the delay, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us while we work through some tech issues. I will call this meeting of the Addison Central School District School Board to order on June 1st at 6:10 p.m. We will start with introductions. If we could start right here. Jamie with you.
Jamie McCallum.
Ron Maxwell.
Steve Cash.
Wendy Baker.
Steve Orzek.
Robin Stato. Ann Mason.
Barb Wilson.
Mary Heather Noble.
Laura Harthun.
And then if we could go online.
Jason Champs.
All right, and then I will turn it over to administrators that are in the room.
Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Nellie Colazo, Assistant Superintendent.
Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities.
Matt Correnti, Director of Finance and Operations.
Sonia's online.
Yep, and then any administrators joining us online.
Sonia Afline, Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Restorative Practices.
All right, thank you, Sonia. All right, our next item is a motion to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion?
So,
All right, is there any discussion on the agenda? If not, we will move to a vote. All those in favor of adopting the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the motion is adopted, or the agenda is adopted. All right, that brings us to our next item, which is our first public comment period. I do want to remind folks that we do have a time limit on public comments of 3 minutes. We'll start in the room and then we'll go online, kind of go back and forth. So if there are any members of the public that would like to address the board, now is your opportunity. We also will have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting, if you would like to. Yeah, I see. Go ahead. You go.
Am I allowed to hand things out to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you wouldn't mind just stating your name as well for the
Pardon?
record. If you can state your
Yeah,
name
I
for the
will.
record as well.
I have 4 books for you guys. My name is Patrick Lawrence. I am a parent of a 5th grader who will soon be at mom's. You all have heard from me via email. I have those additional materials for you that kind of are supplementary. And I just wanted to mention that, the folks who are commenting here today about educational technology in our schools come in a spirit of collaboration and open conversation. So I hope you can kind of sense that from what we're saying. Briefly, to summarize the issue that I'm kind of bringing to the fore is just the use of educational technology in our schools. So our educational budget in ACSD is about $1.4 million. And a substantial amount of that money goes towards software and hardware. We probably have, at least if we're consistent with schools around the state, we probably have at least one iPad or Chromebook per student. And the real issue with is not that we have all those things. The issue is that there's really very little evidence of efficacy of those products, both on an individual product level and then also on the macro level. So I've handed out some test scores from that kind of demonstrate the decline in test scores ever since there was widespread digital instruction in our state. And then we see those same declines both in pretty much every single state that's examined for, and then also internationally in PISA test scores, et cetera. So the evidence for efficacy is not there. Meanwhile, these products are actively compromising the privacy of our students. So there's been numerous instances documented of that happening. The nonprofit Internet Safety Labs has documented that happening for the majority of ed tech products. I don't know about you, but I don't like when companies I don't even know about, like Experian, send me a message and a notice via mail saying I can get $2 for having all my data compromised. I don't like that. I definitely don't want that for my daughter. Third, there's significant safety concerns. Despite all the firewalls and protections we have in place, students do find ways to access harmful content, whether it's simple things like gaming or certain more nefarious things like pornography or online gambling or even being contacted by potential predators. And we've heard about that from parents all around the state. and in 85 different towns as well. So I guess what I would like to say is, with my limited time, is simply that I have proposed model policy for the board to potentially consider and maybe adopt. But really, this is a starting point for conversation, and I really welcome the opportunity to kind of begin that conversation and think about how we can be more intentional about the technology that we use, and not necessarily just fall into the trap of, well, we need to have this because it prepares our students for the future. Because that's not necessarily a direct relationship, that just because we have these things, it's actually setting them up for success. I'm probably about out of time, so thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we will look online and see if any of the attendees joining us this evening would like to make a public comment. If you could please raise your Zoom hand, call on you. I'm not seeing any Zoom hands.
Nobody yet.
All right. If there are members of the public in the room that would like to make a comment.
Hi, I'm Liza Sikeli. I'm the parent of a second grader at Mary Hogan. I'd like to piggyback on what Patrick was speaking about. I'll share just a personal anecdote from my child's experience using tablets in the classroom. It's a daily, there's a daily time for something called Lexia, which is a reading tool on a tablet. This system does not really help my child. We just had a conversation about it again tonight because I wanted to make sure I was representing her feelings accurately. She has a really strong negative reaction to this requirement. She cries herself to sleep on a regular basis because of this computer program, which is not a great way for her to feel about school. She is worried about doing something wrong. It recognizes the limitations of the product to either say, yes, you're doing it right, or no, you don't. And she recognizes the difference that when she meets with a teacher, that teacher might say, well, gee, is this one tricky for you? Or ask a question or give some direction that might help her learn more effectively than just getting a ding or an noise, which scares the heck out of her. She feels at this point her only option during Lexia time is to hover over the computer and look like she's doing something, because she knows she is required to have a certain number of minutes on this machine every day. So she's not actually making any progress. In fact, what she's learning is how to game the system out of getting the minutes that she's required to get. This is not a good use of her time, and it's certainly not getting her any learning objectives. She really wishes she could work with a person rather than a computer. And her reading struggles have really been addressed much more effectively with teacher instruction. And I should say, we also supplement with outside tutoring. I do feel like the gamification of learning feels like a gimmick, and one that backfires for a lot of kids, including ones like mine. I don't feel like that's worth it if the scores that we're seeing, the ones that Patrick pointed out to me, are not backing up that these tools, electronic tools, are helping. I also share a concern for privacy, but I also just want to share that our family has considered moving our child to private school, not just because of this reason, but this certainly is part of our thinking. It's not a decision I want to make, but it's one that I feel like I need to find the right educational fit for my kid. I think that's everything we agreed I'd cover. We wanted to coordinate our stories. And happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. James. All right. Nothing online yet? All right. James, if you could introduce yourself briefly.
I am James Clark.
Thank you. All right. So, is there any other public comments in the room?
I'm going to be on script because I know it's 3 minutes. So. Hi everyone, my name is Ethan Murphy. I'm a Middlebury resident, parent of 2 children in the district, and a board member of the Middlebury Skate Park Project. I'm here tonight to ask for the board's support in preserving a critical funding opportunity for the Middlebury Skate Park. First, thank you for your support of the project, including the board's approval of a letter of permission in 2023. That support helped launch 3 years of volunteer work, fundraising, and community engagement. Since then, our organization has contributed thousands of volunteer hours, built temporary facilities like the Middlebury Mini Ramp, and raised more than $43,000 to fund a professional skate park design process. That design process is now nearing completion. Last year, the town of Middlebury applied for $253,000 in federal funding for skate park construction. The application advanced through state review and is now in the final stages of approval by the National Park Service. The town has already received the draft grant agreement. The only remaining obstacle is the Recreation Park lease. Because Recreation Park is owned by ACSD and leased to the town, federal regulations require a minimum 25-year lease term. The lapse in the current lease has created uncertainty that now threatens the grant. We understand that solutions are being explored, including the possibility of ACSD serving as the grant recipient or subrecipient, while the town manages implementation of the skate park project. We have been told this approach is allowable and has precedent at Recreation Park, where previous grant-funded projects were completed with the school district acting as the grantee. The key issue is timing. The National Park Service must approve this project by July 1st. If we cannot resolve the lease issue or provide an acceptable alternative before then, we risk losing this funding opportunity. This grant is currently our best path to securing the resources needed to build the skate park. With these funds and a completed design, we will be well positioned to pursue additional grants and fundraising needed to make the project a reality. We respectfully ask the board to consider the importance of this opportunity and to work toward a solution that preserves eligibility before the July 1st deadline. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
And I have some bullet points for y'all, and I could send anything over in visual form too.
Okay. All right, I'm still not seeing any hands online. Is there others in the room that would like to make public comment?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mariah North. I have 2 kids at Mary Hogan in kindergarten and 3rd grade, and I'm here with Patrick and Liza to talk about tech use in schools, and I would like to echo everything they said. Liza, I'm amazed how much you hear from your daughter about school, because I get very little. So I heard about tablet use from my oldest son when he was, well, actually at our parent-teacher conference in 1st grade, that he was doing reading programs and math programs. He hadn't used a tablet before. My main hope would just be to have some transparency and discussion. What I've learned since then is that kind of tablets were dropped into the school system like at the time of COVID and have since become quite integrated. Thankfully, my kindergartner wasn't using any of that material this year. But I think with any new technology, we kind of need to look at risks and benefits. I'm not in education, but from what I can tell just through popular media, there are definitely some harms, and I really haven't heard about any benefits. Professionally, I'm a physician, and we definitely struggle with new technology, and kind of we have, systems for going about introducing said technology, consenting people, and reviewing it and kind of keeping it or not. So I would hope that there are similar systems in place at the school board level and education systems. I think there are a lot of trade-offs, and I was appalled to hear that we spend $1.3 million a year, 1.4 on tech in our district. My oldest son has not been able to access a social skills group since he's been at Mary Hogan, and I have to wonder how much money that costs, why we can't have a para to help support him in some things he needs. And if we didn't have tablets, he might be having a lot more day-to-day interaction with his peers, just with small things that I think would help any kid with social skills. Thanks for the time that you provided us tonight, and really thank you all you do for our kids and our education system. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Still no hands online, so we'll come back to the room. Are there additional? Yes.
Yeah, I'll come up. Hi, I'm Dan Rovato. I'm a resident in Middlebury. I'm a father of 2 at Mary Hogan and Mom's. I'm a firefighter here in Middlebury. And I'm a father of 2 active outdoorsy kids that would love a skate park. So I'm here in support of the skate park along with Ethan and these guys. And I kind of want to first just kind of celebrate the progress that has been made, that Ethan has kind of lined out. And I also just kind of want to color it with having very recently joined the effort, but seeing all the work that's happened so far. I see how part of the effort has been to keep it using the right forms, going through the right channels, right procedures, right contacts, find the right grants, do the right thing, and it's just what I see is it's a different challenge to now face this timeline precipice we have figuring out the lease. So I just want to add my support behind creative thinking. If there's ways that could be found around this very unusual problem that is holding up a very large amount of money, that would kind of be our best chance at seeing this thing get built while my kid is still at Mary Hogan. That was the stakes. I really appreciate everything that the school has done for the project so far, and hope we can march on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Still seeing no hands online. We'll come back to the room for others that would like to make a comment. All right. Seeing none, I think we will move on in our agenda. So seeing no hands online or in the room. So with that, we will close our first public comment period. And we will turn to our next agenda item, which is the approval of the ACSD bills. Jason, I was planning to turn that over to you.
No bills to approve.
No bills to approve. All right, well, that is a brief agenda item for this evening then, and we will turn our attention to our next agenda item, which is the report of the student representatives. I do not believe that Nava or Karen are joining us this evening, so we will move right on to the report of the superintendent.
Okay. So we have 2 personnel appointments to put before you. They're not in your agenda because this is the time of year when we're in the last of our hiring. The 2 that I'd like to ask you to go ahead and approve an appointment for are Shayla Couch, who's a bookkeeper at the high school. It's a 1.0 FTE step 15 effective July 1st. And also Zach Mayo, who's a network administrator, 1.0 FTE. It's a non-union, no-step placement effective July 1st also. So those 2 are put before you for approval.
I will make a motion to accept the appointments of Shaylin Couch as bookkeeper, 1.0 FTE, step 15 effective July 1st, and to appoint Zach Mayo, network administrator, 1.0 FTE, non-union, no step placement effective also July 1st.
All right, is there any discussion around these appointments? All right, we'll go ahead and vote on the question then. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. And any abstentions?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. So we have a little bit of a legislative update, which really is going to give you more homework, perhaps, than information, because as you likely know, the legislature adjourned, at the end of last week, and so this is the process by which the legislation that was passed, some of which comes from a conference committee report, is then merged with other precedents, legislation. It goes through a legal interpretation, and then that's issued out to school districts, for guidance relative to where we are. And sometimes the Agency of Ed will provide some guidance as well if it's called for from the legislation. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern, but there are a couple of really big bills that really we have initiatives we've followed through the entire biennium, which is now come to a close. So the governor and all of the folks in the House and the Senate will then be, up for re-election. So it works in Vermont. So there's a lot of discussion about whether the next biennium will have legislators and a governor of a similar mind, or whether there will be other discussions that come in that change where we are. So a couple of materials that I have for you. One of them relates to, if we talk about H955 first, which is the Ed Transformation Bill. There are two big things that bill has set into motion. And I have some timelines for you that were put together from Legislative Council. And, Jason, I'll make sure that you have an online version of these, as we go. Essentially, these are timelines. The one that I'm passing out to you now, and then I think I've got some extras here so that we can pass some out that way also. So if there are extras, if we can zing them that way, then at least there'll be a couple. The second one that's coming around is a record of dates for votes. So the first one that has more boxes really begins to set the work ahead of us in standing up collaborative educational service agencies. We are part of an agency area with Champlain Valley School District and Mount Mansfield School District, as well as the 4 self-contained Addison school districts, Mount Abe, Addison Northwest, Lincoln, and Addison Central. And so that work will begin almost immediately in finding facilitators that will begin the process of pulling people together to stand up a CISA, which is it's not a governance unit, it's a shared services organization. So when they're fully operational, they might be a place where if we need translation services, for example, then that organization could find a way for us to have translation services that are centralized, that we can all pay sort of a fee for service to use and are managed at a central place. That's an example of something that each district contracts with separately, probably, in order to get those things done. And not everyone has access to someone who speaks Burmese, for example, right? So that might be an example of a service that a CISA could stand up. Each of them will probably be a bit different around the state, depending upon what the needs are of the districts that are part of that. The school board will need to appoint a representative to that initiative. It could be a member of the board, it could be the superintendent, or it could be someone else, that just has an area of specialty that you decide should represent the district in that respect. Every district gets a single voice on that board. So the second thing that happens is that that facilitator that just begins the standing up of that collaborative educational service area will also begin to convene a voluntary merger study process that uses the same statute as Act 46, which is the act that brought Addison Central Supervisory Union together as Addison Central School District, with one board rather than 9 boards, I think, or 10. I think you had at that point with a supervisory union board included. So in this case, we will be the conference committee has made clear who's going to need to come to the table with whom across the state. And our partners in that conversation will be Mount Abe, Addison Northwest, Lincoln, and Addison Central. So the board will need to have a board member that is appointed to begin those conversations. And I think there will be probably an agreement among the group that begins as to whether or not more board members should be coming, if it's maybe 2 board members from each district or 3, or how to involve staff, what that all looks like. So essentially those have to begin by October 15th, and that group will have a year to study whether or not we or any part of us should come together to form new districts that would need to be voted on, and you can see that voting timeline is in the second shorter timeline that you have. Whether or not all of that will stand the test of time remains to be seen, but what will happen is everything that is supposed to happen before the legislature gets into session again, which is in January. So anything that is supposed to happen before then needs to take place. And as the board is thinking about your goals and so on and so forth, I want to make sure that you are realistic, because that is going to take a significant amount of time on the board's part to stay informed in that process and to participate well in that process. It will also take a significant amount of time from staff. One of the differences here is that when we came together from a supervisory union to a school district, there already was a single superintendent, a single business manager, as everybody sort of already knew all the finances that were going along. Now we don't know anything about each other, right? So we're going to kind of begin this not knowing anything about how people do things, how everybody budgets, what that looks like. If we call something one thing and another district calls that same thing something else, so we're going to have a lot of that type of discussion about everything, not just finance, but a lot of things. So that's going to take a significant amount of staffing time to do. It's certainly an accelerated timeline. However, we have a direction, and I, for one, am happy to see us come together in the spirit of 2 things. One, moving away from theoretical modeling, where AI is telling us all the ways in which this should go, which harkens a little bit to some of the points made earlier, right? And into what's real, like really what is real in our county and in our districts, and what do we know, and the most important part is that it is there where we will see any benefits to students. And I very much trust this board and our partners that if there are benefits to students, that we will be able to speak about those fearlessly, in doing so. So I think both of those things are a long time coming, and I'm happy to see us have that opportunity. But we just need to make sure that we're devoting the proper amount of time and space to be doing that well. Is there any question that you have about this transformation bill right now, knowing that there will be more later once we get legal interpretations of how everything moves ahead?
Where it says cease is effective July 1st, appointment is made within 30 days, that means by the end of July we need to have appointed someone to be the representative of the CISA. So is that something that's going to be on the agenda in the next 2 board meetings?
The executive committee will take that up and make sure that everything the board is supposed to do is on the docket so that it's done in time, and that it will be the first thing. Yeah.
Who at the state level is overseeing this? Is there like an assigned work group, or is it AOE? Not identified in the bill.
Well, the Vermont Learning Collaborative, which is currently sort of the only CISA that has begun, which is on the other side of the state, they are charged with hiring the facilitators and assigning them. Once there's a facilitator, then that facilitator will be, beginning that work. There are many legislators that are going to step up to be able to help with some of those things, but I think the idea is that we are supposed to do what the law says we need to do, which is what we do. So superintendents, met today and started to discuss the pragmatics of, okay, how many people do we need? Where do we need to have them? When do they need to do their work? What is that work? When do we need board members versus, leadership or staff? What does that look like so that we can all do that planning? So, in Vermont, we're pretty good at getting the work done that we're assigned, and there is a report that will be due, right off to the legislature in terms of just is everybody up and going, and what are you seeing? And so. But generally, such as with Act 46, I think people are trusted to do that work and see what that looks like. It is mandatory that we participate. There is language about the ills of participating in bad faith. I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I would not expect that we would get remotely close to anyone's definition of that, but the idea is that people are truly coming to the table to look at where we are and what our kids might need.
I think I saw Steve first and then Mary Heather.
This is all well and good, and it sounds like it's a homegrown effort. I got to ask the question, who's paying for this? Where's the money coming from? Is it from the sending school districts, or is the state ponying up any of this money, or?
There are small grants for facilitators for each of the areas. However, school district resources across the state will be used to get the work done in that way. So, that is a I don't know, in-kind effort, I guess, that we will be doing. Yep.
Mary Heather.
I'm wondering if and how any community engagement is baked into this process and timeline. Do you know if is there any guidance on that?
There's no requirement for that other than if any mergers are deemed advisable, that then it is brought to communities for a vote in the process that is prescribed in the second smaller sheet. There's no requirement for particular community engagement. There is no requirement that the community determines whether or not something is advisable or not, so that can be done within the merger study committee itself. You as a board retain the ability to determine whether you believe something is advisable or not. If you determine that it is not advisable to merge with another district, and a district which would not be us is below, I think, 750 students, then the state board could actually assign you. So if it wishes to. I think the underlying assumption is that the thought of a foundation formula, which is going to transition me to the next update shortly, and what that looks like will help districts to make a determination about whether it's better to be part of a larger scaled up district, or whether or not it's better to continue on your own. With us, I would say that way is not necessarily clear, just because of our size and where we are. But that's the point of doing the merger study, is to understand those things. So. That's different from districts that are much smaller than us, for example. The only district in the state that will not be required to be part of a merger study is, interestingly enough, is Essex, Westford. They don't have a partner that they need to be coming to the table with. They are about 4,000 students. Champlain Valley's about 4,000 students. They will be discussing things with Mount Mansfield, and Burlington is about 4,000 students. They will be discussing whether or not it's a good idea to merge with South Burlington and Winooski. And these were all assigned, actually, and some of this was changed in the conference committee, which done in the public eye. So, we're all catching up with, with kind of what's come out and what that looks like. So we'll see.
There's a few things I have to add. One, for the board, I do anticipate there will be more to do, just in terms of the workload that we have to navigate. So I think if folks have additional volunteer capacity, that would be greatly appreciated over the next couple of months. That's one thing. The others, I fully expect that there are going to be situations where we don't know what the next step looks like. And I think as board members, as we're talking to members of the public, not being afraid to say, I don't know, because I don't think we will know what happens. I think we will do our best to keep members of the public informed, and we certainly will come back to this in board meetings. But I think it's important at times to be clear with people that the next step is not exactly clear. Similar to Wendy, I've received communication from other school district chairs over the past couple of days, and I anticipate there will probably be more dialogue in the times ahead. And then the last thing I did want to point out on the chart that Wendy shared, it does look like the State Board of Education has the final approval as far as kind of organizational structures. Robin, you mentioned the AOE, but it looks like the final say will be the State Board of Ed. So.
Also, you can see in March on the big chart that is where it's anticipated that the rules relative to small by necessity, as we've been discussing it, and sort of, the criteria for that and so on and so forth is anticipated to be finalized by the state board. I know that's something that is meaningful, a meaningful conversation for folks in our district. So the other large lift of legislation is the yield bill, and I actually, Matt pointed out, I made perhaps a wishful error.
Move on, did anyone else have questions about those timelines? Any board members or anything? I know it's a lot to digest.
We'll be digesting for a while.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So in the yield bill, as I said, I made a wishful typo, we'll call it that, in my update to you today. In that there are a couple things that are particularly important. As you know, there are three things. One is that the full amount that the governor wanted to have applied to tax rates was applied to tax rates, which Matt has said might represent about a 6% smaller tax bill for people in our district, depending on the town and all those variables. So it will lower the taxes that people are actually asked to pay in our district, certainly. The second thing is that the excess spending threshold is lowered. It used to be 118% of the average.
State average per pupil spending.
Just want to make sure I get the right series of words. If you remember right, I think in our FY27 budget, we were at 114.
In FY27?
Yeah, we're at 114.
16.
So we had about 4% to play with.
Yeah.
So that has gone from 118 to 115.5. Yeah. So the assumption in that is that the inflation, metrics, right, which are usually between 3% and 4%, right? So those move with you. However, any expenditures that we have that are above those metrics, right, will become problematic. Health care obviously typically doesn't come in around those inflation metrics, and contracted salary increases also don't come in typically around those metrics. So essentially, I think probably the effect of that is that we will be coming to you with a feasibility target that relates to the excess spending threshold. as opposed to asking you for a feasibility target, we will be talking about what that actually means for us. Matt and I are gonna try to put together something that is a little bit more detailed around that for the June 22nd meeting, pending that those details are given to us, just so that we're able to, it may take us a longer time to be thinking about that. So, obviously that's an important piece. The third leg of the stool is what's included or not included in the excess spending threshold relative to capital construction. There were a number of proposals that were floated. The ones I liked the best were the ones that excluded all capital debt out of excess spending thresholds, so that districts would not need to have to choose between educational programming and fixing the HVAC systems. That did not make the final conference committee agreement, and so the wishful typo that I made was saying that excess spending would exempt capital costs happening after July 1st of 2026, and really it's before.
Yeah.
So that means that any bond that our district would take on would potentially be considered inside that, the bond payment would be considered inside that excess spending threshold. So again, Matt and I will work it up and see what comes between now and then relative to how this impacts us, but it's not nothing for sure in that sense. So that's just, I just want to make sure to just put all that out, for your questions. For now, there will be more. We will digest that as well. I'm not sure if there's anything that's important for you to hear me say at the moment, or if you're okay to move on.
Questions? All right.
Can I?
Yeah, go for it.
So this January 15th Secretary of State report due on town meeting day elections. So since the facilitators are only going to be hired in September, and I guess the meeting's going to be continuing for a year beginning October, what does that report essentially entail from what you've gathered?
From what I understand, and Ron is talking about the January 2027 marker, the Secretary of State report. What I understand is that that's a report that indicates what would be required legally in order to form a new district. So who would need to vote on what? And I think there are widespread concerns just about the timeline as a whole, the public entities aren't known for moving quickly through processes that need to be vetted thoroughly and done in the public eye. So it's when a school district entity potentially shifts, then its voting base shifts, and now representation on a school board shifts. How do you go through the process of closing down one district and opening another? So my understanding is that Secretary's State report will be covering whatever is possible to cover about that at that time.
Okay.
Barb?
Yeah. Kind of looking forward on the timeline for March 31st, where the rules are amended for small sparse school determination. And I probably should remember this, but I don't. Has there been any discussion that if you have a situation where you have a school where the enrollment is too small, right, that the state in any way would then help with any financial resources from a capital perspective if you needed to, if you needed to merge two schools? As we've looked at our schools, right? There's work that needs to be done. Would there be any relief there, do we know? Or I don't remember where that ended.
Yeah, it kind of went back and forth in a number of things. So, what generally I could say now, and this might be something that, we could put more of a finer point on in a couple of weeks, but is that I think the idea is that the new districts would have funds available to them that relate to merging costs, whether those are individual schools or or other things. There's in the conference committee report that I shared with you, there are some funds that are set aside, at maybe 45 million, something like that, for those kinds of things. Schools are not required to merge together if the cost of doing so exceeds. And now there's language in there that relates to the capital reserves. Which is interesting. Also, I think the intent of Act 73 is that, if you have schools that are in close proximity to each other and one has room for another, that the thought is to consider combining those communities together and educating them more efficiently. The state board has criteria for when that should be considered. That criteria seems to have been widely accepted and is not anticipated to be debated. It's really, what is the timeline for that, and what does that look like? If the amount to ensure capital construction is done if needed exceeds the savings that, on a reasonable basis, then, that is one of the criteria that would mean that doesn't need to take place. So the next step is for rulemaking to be done, which then gives us the how, how things need to happen and what that looks like. Thank you. I will say, I think the focus of funds and consolidation seems to be more on secondary students, particularly high school students, and ensuring that high school students who are in smaller populations and do not have access to accelerated coursework, things like that, are able to be merged with other high schools to provide those opportunities. So I think that is where the focus is. The extent to which it is reasonable to combine smaller schools to be able to free up funds that would enable some of those other things perhaps to take place. I think that's maybe more of where that is coming from. Now, it wasn't the discussion 2 years ago when we began, but I think that seems to be a little bit more about where it's landing now.
Just to follow up on that, is the small sparse school determination, that is for elementary schools, if I'm not mistaken?
Any school.
Any school.
Yes. Yeah.
But will there be, because those are very different situations, do you think there's going to be any difference in the kind of the numbers or the?
I would hate to make a prediction about that at this point. So those are the big pieces of legislation. I know you have a full agenda tonight, and we will get more, information about legislation, and we'll continue to talk about those things as we go. But I wanted to make sure that you at least had some timelines to begin to do some digesting. The executive committee, I imagine, will take up, all right, who needs to be appointed to be ready for what, and how do we at least position ourselves to be ready to begin when the invitations are coming along. In that sense. In terms of other, I want to share that the Mount Abe board has invited Sheila Sewell from Addison Northwest and I to join Patrick in a conversation. I think it's either June 6th, it's June 9th. June 6th is graduation on Saturday. You should come. But to just talk about what it has been like to support communities from different towns learning together, how conversations have gone around that in our district, and what's important for them to know as they are grappling with some of those pieces as well. So I will be sharing with you what I will be sharing with them when we're together on the 8th, since we have a meeting that night. Both Sheila and I will be joining them virtually. and providing any assistance that we can to our neighbors. And otherwise, I just need to understand, James, if you are coming to graduation, I have homework. Okay, or Robin?
I don't think I can be.
Okay, there we go. And show of hands of who might be attending the awards ceremony on Friday. All right, board members, 1, 2, we need to save seats.
What time is that?
10-ish, we start the parade, and then it moves into that. So 2? Okay, good. Got it.
There was one, Jason had his hand up.
And Jason,
Yeah, Jason.
yes, 3, that's right, perfect. Thank you. And I think that concludes the superintendent's report tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for walking us through that.
Yep.
All right, is there any questions for Wendy before we move on? All right. The next agenda item is a report of the board chair. The first item under that is the 2026 to 27 goal reflection from the retreat. Currently, the hope is to have our board goals finalized at our next meeting on June 8th. We had some productive conversations during the retreat about our goals, and so at this point we need to figure out where we want to go as far as that effort. So I don't know if folks have thoughts. Mary Heather, you shared some kind of draft language that evening. Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, so after our retreat, I sent the copy of the presentation with all of the feedback, and then I just now shared a draft of just language, just literally my throwing spaghetti at the wall attempt to put into words a few goals that we might contemplate, just kind of throwing clay on the wheel. So I've put words, or I've put goals together for 3 possibilities. 1, kind of really zeroing in on the community engagement for capital improvement planning. Excuse me. 2, to try to refine student academic progress and wellness goal. And 3, to kind of look at how we might begin contemplating reviewing our recent board actions. A couple of just disclaimers about this. One of them, or I tried to look at the rubric for some of the district quality standards to help guide the language here. And I think it's less problematic for the first one, but for the second one, it almost has, the language of the rubric almost seems like we're doing the work of the administration. And so I'm not really sure how we might work with that. It says the ACSD board will establish specific measurable targets. Literally, those are the words that are in the rubric. I think perhaps if we replaced establish with like approve, or something to make sure that we're staying in that governance horizon and not veering into administrative work. And then again, the last one, I tried to keep it pretty like we'll maybe research the expected outcomes and just begin that work and try not to bite off too much. But again, these are just first attempts, and also none of this considers all of the information that Wendy just shared. That is also big, heavy lift that we may have to take into consideration as we formulate our goals. So this is basically just taken from our board retreat and gives us a starting point from that. But given all this, this may go out the window, I don't know. So I hope I didn't forget anybody. Did I forget?
No.
Okay.
I have it. I didn't.
You don't have it? Barb?
No.
Okay, let me make sure I share it with you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I think I have an extra.
And yes, I have a paper copy as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our homework from the retreat was, on the admin side, was to talk a little bit about the goals that Mary Heather had put up as an option, and then say, okay, based on the administrative work in those areas, what might help us for you, as if you had a goal like the following, it would help us to get the admin work together in that same vein. And so we came up with a couple suggestions, and I'm just turning to the team for make sure I don't forget anything or misrepresent the conversation. It was a lively and welcome conversation. And so relative to goal number one, I think that was before we knew how the legislative session was going to end also. So I too would sort of put that one aside for a moment. And I need to think about that one a little bit, I think. So I'm not sure about that one now. Number two, with the academics, we would appreciate the board's attention on policy that will support some of the academic pieces that we are together putting in place in order to be able to ensure that everyone has an equitable opportunity for success. So there are some policies. Our retention policy is one of them. There are other policies that I think other districts nationally have that speak about when intervention occurs, how it occurs, when it doesn't occur, just things of that nature that actually help put some bones around some of the discussion actually that our stages of support are prompting, and if the executive committee sees fit, it may be possible for me to share that with the board on the 8th. That is you've seen that in the updates a bit, and we're in discussion across the district around that, but that may give a little bit more flexibility there. We agree with Mary Heather that the board should be providing oversight around the establishment of appropriate targets. However, we are very happy to take on the work of bringing those drafts to you and saying here's where we are, and actually the stages of support for students prompts that to happen in a number of new ways, and so I think that will give us a framework to engage upon well. So that language I think is helpful. So did I miss anything about our reflection in terms of student outcomes? Secondary?
That was a primary focus that we felt that we needed to present more of, because we focused a lot on elementary this year.
One,
Go ahead.
well, I got really deep in this research.
That's
Hand it to
where we
me
were.
right before this conversation, and it's really interesting. We talked about with secondary that although at the elementary level there's data measures we want to put in place, which comes with the assumption that maybe then we'll know more or know what actions to take. We have those very data measures in place at the secondary level, which is just interesting to think about. So what can we learn from going to the secondary level where we have local common assessments in every grade 6 through 12, I should say 6 through 10, with our 11th and 12th grade pathways more flexible. And that's data that we can and do compare to our state testing data and our screening data, and has already filled the holes that things like the math spreadsheet data we shared with you or the writing spreadsheet data we shared with you is starting to fill. So what can we learn from looking at that data? It's I think a good question.
We also talked about, we reflected a lot on the comments that all of you made, in particular about the metrics that we want to use, right? Because Anne brought that up. However, right, trying to ensure that we remind ourselves that we're going to be taking in a new data system, right? And how that data system is going to be created to provide us the information. The fact that we provided everyone this year base data, right? Where we are, where's our baseline, and particularly with having me as new and having Sonia as a new person, and how we're collecting data differently with the information that you want us to gather, having that baseline this year and trying to figure out how to move forward. Also with the systems that we're working with, student supports, having to make sure that those equitable access to those tiered services is particularly how do we track them, and having our principals have a voice in that is very important to us. So the reflection was primarily about how we are as operationally going to provide the support to your goals. That's how we reflected more on those pieces, right? Because we have to make sure that we can have something at the end to show you.
Yeah.
Did you mention the case studies?
That's coming. Oh, that's next. And Courtney's very excited about that. So our suggestion for your consideration, relative to your academic goal, is that you hold on setting that until you're able to see the presentation around stages of support, so that you begin to take into account what that work looks like, which with the executive committee's permission, we can provide to you at the June 8th meeting, which will be recorded, so if people aren't able to be there, they could watch that. So the third goal, in terms of reviewing your decisions, one of the things that is an administrative practice that we thought would help you get at what kind of an impact are you having for students and families in your work, and do that in a way that is lifting the work well. Or sometimes when you begin to ask a question or you begin to review something, it actually changes the thing that you're reviewing, right? The research itself becomes an instrument in the work. So you have to be careful about that, and thinking about how to do that well. One tool that is used on the operations side for that work is something called a case study, where we can develop a protocol to say, we're going to look at various decisions made by the board, or even, shifts from the administrative lens relative to this that are impacting the student experience. And say, okay, we're going to analyze that according to its finance, its human resources impact, its student work impact, its climate and culture impact, its family perception, right? We can come up with a number of different criteria. And that is a protocol that we could together devise that would then could apply to a number of things, including, okay, we now have class sizes that went from sometimes 6 or 7 to now an average of 15 across the district. What impact did that make, right? We have learning communities that are blended together. What impact did that make? We have IB that is happening, in different places. What is the impact that was supposed to make, and what is it actually making? And you've had some folks that have come and asked you. Ed Tech is another one, right? So if we might consider designing that protocol together in a way that met the board's expectations for the types of lenses that we are looking at a decision from, then we could work together to get that done, in a way where the board has an appropriate role for that goes along with its governance and the many other things that you're going to need to be doing. And also we're able to involve, our finance team, our facilities team, our tech team, whatever it is that is going along with that, who have the operational expertise. And our principals are really the foundation of those pieces, so they as designers and as reporters are going to be an important partner in that, so Courtney, what did I forget, or what else would you be excited about adding relative to that conversation?
I think the only thing I would add is that part of the idea for the case study, which this idea has already taken on new embellishments which sound very good, and but one idea was that there are some pockets in the district where things are going really well. Actually, there's more than pockets. There's big areas, And that gets lost when we look at just like big picture data. And it's hard to tell those little stories. We also have inklings of why that's happening, but we don't want to come to you with anything but just straight data. And this might give us the opportunity to look at, okay, where do we think based on small data, big data, qualitative, quantitative data, things have taken a turn for the better, and a case study might allow us to analyze those things too. What I like about what Wendy described is that it's not only going to the areas where things are going well and admiring that, but maybe using that as a springboard for thinking of other things and applying that protocol to any number of areas is a good idea.
That's the nature of the discussion that we had on the admin side, unless I've forgotten something.
So from the admin side, if we are able to have a presentation on the 8th, when do you think board members could see something kind of put together from the admin side? Do you think it'd be before that meeting or after that meeting? I'm just trying to think. We have the language that Mary Heather shared, and how can we give board members the opportunity to look at both of those, and then what the timing is going to be? So I don't know.
Yep, it's up to you. And we certainly can take, again, goal number 1 is a TBD right now, but we certainly could take some of these ideas if you appreciate this direction a bit and massage something, so that way we're adding that to the pile on the 8th for you to think about. You know, I mean, that's fine. The 22nd you also have, you know, in that sense. And my guess is that your goals will, you know, you will want a little bit more time to see what the requirements and opportunities are relative to the legislation and what that looks like, probably before you finalize some of that. So maybe by the 22nd you will have digested those things and sort of be ready to go. You know, in terms of a direction that then can be wordsmithed.
So I think if on the 8th we have the language that Mary Heather shared, all board members should have that in your inbox. If by chance you don't, please let Mary Heather know. And then hopefully on the 8th you can get a better picture from the admin side. And then by the 22nd, board members should have had an opportunity to kind of put those two things together, contemplate them, and then hopefully we can.
With additional legislative direction, unfortunately.
I mean, it may end up just taking goal 1 and being like,
yeah. So.
Yes, and I do think it's important to be realistic. And Courtney, I really appreciated what you said last, just about kind of the data as a whole versus areas where there may be challenges, areas where there's successes. I certainly heard at the board retreat that there is an interest in academic progress and wellness across the spectrum of student experiences. I think it's really important that, you know, we keep our eye on kind of that whole spectrum of things and not just one band within it. So.
Do we need to have 3 goals?
No.
Okay,
No.
so
No.
it wouldn't be crazy to have 2, especially given that
It wouldn't be
the
crazy to have
the
one.
unspoken third goal is
Yeah.
deal with it.
Or maybe just one.
Or maybe just one.
And so this is a lot of information, but I think we have a lot of latitude. I would encourage us to keep track of the strategic plan and the DQS as we go through this, so that we are kind of working within those frameworks, but there is a lot of latitude.
Yeah, what kind of popped in my head is kind of the really meaty goal could be around student academic progress and wellness after we receive the presentation, right? Fine tune that a little bit. And review of recent board actions, maybe we take one thing and kind of apply that storybook to it. Just one, you know, just to really start doing it and get our feet wet in doing it, as opposed to making it this big goal that we're gonna, you know, do all, you know, decisions and that kind of thing. but that might be something to consider, just to be able to, something that was recent, maybe with the merger of schools or whatever. So that would be what kind of came to my mind. So we don't lose it, that skill that we perfected, or you perfected, I should say.
Yeah.
Robin, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, well, just sort of piggybacking on the what is expected of the goals. I mean, I think one of the things I keep hearing and thinking about is we start our goals way out here, which works for a strategic plan, but when we're looking at the next 12 months, I feel like we get really ambitious. Like maybe the goal for the year is just, we're going to have a structure, or we're going to have a methodology, or we're going to have identified what we want to measure, not show progress in it yet. Like we just need to define what we need and how we're going to get there. And that's a more realistic 1-year goal to sort of drive to the average, because it feels ambitious, and then I feel like there's a scramble to retrofit or try to find old. I don't know. That's just me, how I think about some of these conversations. It feels like we want a thing, but we don't even know what we have now. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, I'll just make the point that the language, especially for the second one, was really influenced by the rubric. Yeah, where I was really trying to get us into that proficiency territory. And maybe that it's too big of a jump. So,
or maybe the specific is just on us. Like we need to say what we want measured to start the conversation, and then
it is important to us that you provide oversight. It is not necessarily helpful that you tell us what should be measured. Right, and I'll give you a very concrete example of that. It could be that the way in which we want to raise students' writing involves a number of different types of writing that students might do, and the development of benchmarks and cut scores that educators understand should be set based on where we know the sampling of student work is, that then shift as the student proficiency shifts and changes. That's not work that we want to wait for the board to do. That's administrative work that is done by folks who are specialists in those areas and understand, how and when to do that work. What we do need is for you to hold us accountable for sharing publicly how things are going. And I will tell you that the possibility of you focusing on secondary work, I think is exciting. I share that excitement in part because MUMS is one of the places where our students in our district grow the most. And we really haven't had a chance to talk about that, together, because we've done the acute work, that we've needed to do first, right? So I think there are some pieces at the secondary level that if we were to come together and learn from those, and work together with those teams to bring some light to, I think we'll have an exponentially positive impact, and that we would appreciate your partnership in that.
Yeah.
One thing I like about the language Mary Heather included here is that it does seem to focus to me on the presentation and reporting. And when I made that comment in the last meeting about metrics, that was based on a comment Emily made. And that's really what I meant by that. Not like us saying, here's what you should be collecting, and that to me is what this goal should be, is that we should make a plan for what we want to be reported for your sake, so that you guys know what we're going to be asking, have a good amount of time to prepare for that. And that does feel like a tangible and achievable goal that we should be doing no matter what is happening. So to me, that feels like within governance and helpful to the district. And also to me, it almost sounds like that could be combined with goal 3, that maybe the case study could be a way of reporting to us some things that are going, that could be a form of what those reports look like.
All right. I don't want to cut this conversation short, but our agenda still shows about 2 hours, and I don't think people want to be here till 9:30 tonight. And I know we have some big topics that need time to talk about. So So if no one is opposed, we're going to move on to the agenda. Like I said, I don't want to cut the conversation short. We do have some other stuff that we definitely need to get through. So, all right. So as I said, yes, look at what Mary Heather shared. Hopefully we can have some insight, some additional insight from the administration as to kind of your thinking around this.
More clay on the wheel.
Yep. Can put those together. All right. So our next agenda item is approving the revised AOE capital improvement plan. If you look in your board materials, you will see from page 3 to page 10 that capital improvement plan is included in there. Jason, I don't know if you want to lead through this.
We reviewed this on Thursday when we were together and went over the substantive changes that we made based on board feedback. So if after you guys have reviewed it, there's still additional changes you want made, just let us know. Otherwise, I think it's in good shape and we could probably approve it as is.
All right. Is there a motion regarding this? Yeah, Barb?
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the Addison Central School District 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2031 as included in our board materials.
All right. Is there any discussion of the motion? All right. Seeing no discussion, I think we will move to a vote on the question. All those in favor of approving the capital improvement plan, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the capital improvement plan has been approved. All right, that then takes us to agenda item G, which is committee updates. Our first committee update is communications and engagement. That was supposed to be Jess. I don't know if there are any members of the Communications and Engagement Committee that would like to update us.
We're quick trying
Can
to
I
pull
have
up
a quick by memory recap?
And if it's all right, we could jump down to a different committee.
let's
We'll
jump down.
give communications and engagement. And if there isn't an update tonight, I think everyone recognizes this time of the year with schedules. Things just get chaotic and it's hard to get everyone in the same room. So we will come back to communications and engagement. Our next committee is the policy committee. So anyone in
Jamie
the
just
room?
stepped out. Jamie.
Jamie stepped out.
We can come back.
I think Jamie had volunteered to be Jess's backup to give the CD.
Oh.
All right. I don't know if you could
I
quite
didn't realize he was outside the room.
see it, but he stepped outside. All right, Jason, I think we're going to jump down to you with the facilities committee. And so if you are prepared, we would love to hear a committee update from you on facilities. Thank you.
Quick update from finance, just asked me to fill in. So we met on May 14th and we reviewed updated Q3 financials and saw that the rough ending balances hovering more on the positive side, still yet to be determined. We'll know more as we close out the fiscal year. We reviewed the audit findings for fiscal year 25. There was no significant audit findings as part of that. And then we laid some of the groundwork for the next budgeting season and outlining the budgeting plan for fiscal year 28. That was it for finance.
All right, is there any questions for the finance committee? All right, on to facilities.
Facilities committee met on the 12th and we largely spent most of the time going over the plan that we just approved. But we also heard from Matt about just like different term bonds that, and what that looks like to have a, you know, a 5-year, $2 million bond, a 15-year, $15 million bond, 25-year, $28 million bond. And you ran us through a few different scenarios there to see what the different financing options and impacts are. We had a quick review of the skate park update and saw some of the initial designs of the skate park, which was very exciting. And then we heard about the Hannaford Career Center's request to change the configuration and usage of some of the high school and career center space.
All right, is there any questions for the facilities committee? All right, we will jump next to student outcomes committee. I see Ellen's name is on that. She is not with us tonight. Is anyone from student outcomes?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I just looked over those notes. So basically we had our first meeting. Excuse me. I believe it was in early May.
May 1st.
May 1st. Yeah. And it was mostly kind of reacquainting ourselves with the work and introducing kind of 2 new members of the committee to the work that we've already done, and trying to map out kind of the kind of yearly schedule at which reports will go out. And I don't think I'm forgetting anything major, but please correct me if I am.
No, that was perfect.
All right, thank you. Any questions for student outcomes? All right, Steve I see you for negotiations.
Yes, actually the negotiations committee has not reorganized yet. That will happen tomorrow, and we will be meeting at 4 o'clock to hopefully get that nailed down. It has been a little difficult to schedule time, so we hope to have that worked out tomorrow, but there's really nothing to report since we haven't met.
Thank you. And then next we'll go to the Hannaford Career Center. Laura.
We will be talking about some of what we talked about at the meeting later on, so we'll skip that for now. We have approved, pending if everything looks good, the purchase of an electric bus to be able to shuttle around different classes all in one vehicle instead of in multiple vehicles. That is a used bus. That is a very good deal for us. By all accounts. Anything you want to add, Steve?
We had the it's not graduation.
Celebration of learning.
Celebration of learning, because we don't grant degrees over at the Career Center, but it's the same night as the retreat, and so we were not able to attend, but by all accounts it was a very good ceremony, and it went very well.
Did they record that?
Did what?
Do you know if MCC is?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. If you wanted to watch it, the thing I remember from it is it's just a nice showcase of all the local businesses that provide financial scholarships and supports for students, which is amazing.
Yeah. Generally very well attended and very enthusiastic event.
And this year was in Virginia.
In Virginia.
So.
All right, any questions for the Hannaford Career Center? All right, Barb.
Yeah, this will be short. The meeting happened on May 14th. Unfortunately, I was stuck in traffic coming back from Boston, where we had our visa interview, so I was not able to participate. And I did look online. I was hoping that maybe it was recorded, so I could go, and there wasn't a recording, so I apologize that I did not participate. It would have been really interesting to participate and really listen in on the conversation. And I believe Nellie was there presenting, so I'm sure it was probably well received and excellent. Was there a lot of interaction in the?
Yes, there was a lot of interaction. I also brought Erin Robinson, our specialized service coordinator, just so they can meet the team, and then we had a slide deck so they can meet our two administrative assistants that we now have in the district that provide those services to our case managers. We had probably, I don't want to overestimate, but like 7 families, parents that were there, and some children, and it was very interactive. We just asked questions back and forth. There was questions about just pretty much ESY, extended school year. There was questions about how a student gets evaluated, what's the process, what's an IEP process. We also had a representative from Vermont's Family First Advocacy, so I think it went well. Yep.
Thank you so much for providing my update for me. Thank you.
All right, so next we'll go to MCTV, and then we will jump back to Jamie for the policy and communications and engagement updates that I believe he has. So MCTV.
So I got to go to the Vermont Access Network annual meeting on the 1st of May. That was really eye-opening for me, having never participated in anything like that before. To see kind of the broad range of what community TV looks like in different areas of the state. Some interesting size differences, some very, very heavily staffed and others working on kind of a skeleton crew. I think we tend to fall kind of on the smaller end of things. And we do a tremendous amount with the staff that we have. So major props to our very favorite Drew over here and all of the MCTV staff. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, with that, we will jump back up to the.
Very excited for getting into the new library very soon in a new studio space.
All right. So Jamie, sounds like you may have a communications and engagement update. Robin and Ann, if you have one also that you want to share as part of it, you're welcome to.
Yeah, Jess asked me just to say a few things. I'll just say that the baskets and the various accoutrements that were delivered for Teacher Appreciation Week seemed appreciated. We heard snippets of they were received, thank you, that kind of thing. That was good. We held I don't think we've had a report back since we went to Ripton, correct? So we held one of our sort of satellite meetings in Ripton with I think 5 community members, plus the committee. Wendy was there, Emily was there, and it was great. They raised a variety of issues that we sort of reflected on in the next committee meeting, which is some of them I'm sure we'll be raising to the level of the board soon.
All right.
Anything else want to add?
Anything to add?
Only that I think Jess sent out my Venmo issue about the info about the teacher appreciation, and I think I've received from half of people. So if anyone has forgotten, I will accept half or Venmo.
Just how much?
It was $37, I think. Just an email per person.
Thank you for that reminder. Should I do policy?
Can I ask first?
Yeah. Go for it, Ron.
So, has there been any progress on deciding when and in what form to kind of report back to the wider board about the findings of the board town hall?
I'm looking to you guys.
Tricia delivered something at the end of the year before the election, just some observations from the meetings that had happened to date. That I can, perhaps I'll just look in our minutes and I'll share that around.
Thanks.
Yep.
On to policy if there's no other questions.
Okay, I have the first non-C30 policy update in like a year. Cool. You're gonna see the policies tonight that we've been working on. One is the gift policy, the other is really minor reversions to A2. The gift policy was the most interesting by far, and we'll probably talk about it more when we talk about that tonight. So I don't want to say much. I'll just say that process of thinking about that policy was done. Sean Farrell from the high school came to those meetings and was sort of part of the regular conversation, and so some of that community engagement worked its way into the policy, which you'll see tonight as well. We're going to be doing a policy audit this summer as usual, and I think the next well, anyway, I'll stop there.
The first reads are on the agenda for now.
Yeah.
Roll right into those first reads.
Oh, okay.
You are ready?
Sure. Let me just get them in front of me here. Laura, just to get one out of the way, which I think is basically non-controversial, Laura edited A2, which is responsibilities of board members. That was basically a response to the way, if my memory serves, Laura, our committees were and are composed. And for example, when you look down to see the bullet points for each committee, you will see things like this committee has at least 3 board members and no more than 5, blah, blah, blah. That was basically made to accommodate the fact that some committees, like the policy committee, had 4, which was sort of out of line with what the policy said. Laura, jump in here. What else did we do to this policy to change it?
Some minor tweaks to the list of what each does, just to reflect what they are actually doing instead of what was written in 2018.
Okay.
Or 2022, rather.
Yeah, we think basically the good news is that this policy, as it's currently written, it reflects what we do. And so that's always a,
Should
plus.
be non-controversial.
Yeah, pretty non-controversial. Do you mind if I say a few things about the other one next? Is that people have questions?
Yeah, do folks have questions on this one?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So about the gift policy. So I don't totally remember, but my memory is that the idea of a gift policy was sort of floated after we discussed the flag situation last summer, which I think is almost about exactly a year ago. And so because we didn't really, at the time, if anyone remembers, we didn't really have a go-to way to be like, all right, what do we do when we get these requests for gifts? I learned in the course of the process that we actually get quite a good many of gifts, which we're very lucky to get, and many of which just simply we as board members don't really know about, and so this policy was written, I would say, to sort of formalize the process by which we talk about and receive all gifts, and stipulate which gifts may require the superintendent to come to the board with questions, concerns, or suggestions about what to do with this gift offer or request. It is not meant in any way to inhibit the reception or offer of gifts, but just to sort of formalize how we talk about that and what we do about that when we receive either certain large gifts or certain gifts which people may find more interesting than others, like the flag one. So a lot of our last meeting and perhaps the second to last meeting focused on number 5, the last bullet point under 5A, I would say. so I don't want to rehash the whole conversation, but the extent to which we thought a gift would raise like public, I don't know, questions or challenges or issues, whatever, that Wendy would, the superintendent would bring that to the board. That was one thing that came up a lot. And then there was the issue of the larger threshold of money. That where's the 250 number?
First bullet.
First bullet point number 5. That large gifts, or I don't know if they're large, but gifts of 250 or more would also be brought to the board. I'm trying to highlight other things that I thought were interesting to our discussion.
Can I ask about that number?
Sure.
Because in 5B, first bullet point.
I see that.
Yeah, 250,000 or a threshold established by the board. Isn't this where we would establish that threshold?
It could be a different threshold. If you decided that you wanted a threshold different from that, then you could change that.
Take a board action.
Was its intent?
It gives the board flexibility.
I mean, you always have flexibility to your policy. It just calls attention to the fact that you could establish a different threshold.
There's one more threshold thing in number 10, in point 10, the last sentence right above point 11. Says the superintendent will report all gifts of $5,000 or more from any one donor or source to the board annually. So I think in general the spirit of this sentence, there's a specific thing, but there's also the idea that we want to begin to more, I think, return to older practices, which is to acknowledge the gifts that we get. And we're not talking about like bundles of crayons here, but like in general things that would be of a certain size, or that, you know, we should disclose for public reasons, or also just to recognize and thank the people who gave it to us.
That would be in-kind gifts as well as financial gifts.
This is great. Thank you, guys.
Mary Heather?
Yes, this is very thorough. I was very impressed with just the structure and outline and all the work that went into this. I'm curious, since I don't believe the VSBA had a model policy for that, what was the starting point? Like where you looked to have your starting point? And also just a curiosity that operationally, how do we acknowledge gift? Like what is the current system for the gifts that come into the district, and how are they acknowledged and all that?
I think the starting point was Wendy. And that definitely was the case. And then we met with Pietro, and Pietro was like, "This looks good." So that's one thing I forgot to say about it. He did not see this most latest draft, and I don't know if he's seen. I don't remember if that 5 bullet point was in it when he was it. I think
the spirit of it was.
The spirit of it was. So that's how it started. As far as the other part, you should answer.
Yeah, they're acknowledged in lots of different ways now, you know, certainly by the people who are closest to the donor and so on and so forth. You know, if Bruce has folks that are here that are helping with something, you know, the roof, for example, when, you know, a lot of people just arrived, right, and donated time, you know, immediately to help with something. I mean, there are obviously ways that individuals who are most connected with folks who are providing the gift, broadly speaking, you know, they do that. There's not currently a process for the board to acknowledge that, nor is there transparency about all the types of community supports that are out there, which is just really important to be able to acknowledge and discuss in that way.
Yeah, I see Jason.
I have 2 questions. I'm wondering how do we come to the $250,000 threshold? And what would be the significance or impact if that was lowered to, you know, something like $100,000? And my second question is, the naming rights section seems out of place in the gift policy, because as I understand it, naming rights would be something the district would give to another entity to name something that the district owns. And so it's not necessarily a gift that we would receive, so I'm not sure why it's in this policy.
Naming rights, Jamie, usually, you're talking about number 9, so, it's just very clear, well, you have the Collins Field, right? That was, it references a family that, was instrumental in, MUHS's development and past. And so it's common for donors to approach, entities and say, we would love to support something and we would be very happy if you put our name on the side of the thing that we're developing, right? So this just provides clarity that, that is immediately a board consideration and as to whether or not you would like to allow something to be named in exchange for a donation to its cause. Did that answer your question about that?
So, but this also does not actually say that naming rights have to be associated with a gift. So, which, I don't know, have we ever thought about allowing naming rights to things that we own? It's probably something we've never considered, but the way this is stated, we could have naming rights for something that is not associated with a gift, and this is in the gift policy. So, I don't know. I'm the only one who it's like this is a little bit odd, and I'll be quiet.
No, it jumped out at me as well, but I don't think that the Middlebury football stadium would be kind of a lucrative facility to name after a company. I just don't think that would be, there's a market for that.
Would people be happier if it said naming of facilities, programs, or spaces associated with a gift requires school board approval, so that it's
Right.
Because I actually don't think that sentence is actually true. We don't have to approve every name of everything, do we? Maybe we do. But in any case, that would be a separate policy.
In place, you would, which
yeah,
I
so
think you
maybe
should.
associated with a gift.
That's definitely what I thought
Yes.
the sentence said,
Yeah.
or what it implied.
Okay.
But yeah. So, what do you think about that, Jason?
That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We will make that change. At the meeting, last meeting, Sonia actually called our attention to point 12. Just so this is on everyone's radar. This basically says that we can refuse any gift anyway, for basically any reason. It does stipulate, sort of, I think that we offer a reason, but I think nonetheless the board sort of reserves the right to do that. And when asked why we had that in there, the answer was, well, that just seems to be the way. I think that's just statutory powers granted to the board.
It is. It's transparency that you do have that. The board has the ability to take any action it deems necessary for the sound administration of the school district.
Oh, I see.
That is the way the statute reads,
Right.
and so it's the transparency that, despite all other things, if in the end the board feels that it is not in the school district's best interest to accept a gift, that's within your right to do.
But only if you know about it, right? And so that's the one thing that worries me about this policy a little bit, is that there's a very wide range of gifts that the board wouldn't find out about until the end of the year fiscal year report.
That's correct, and I mean, the intent is to leave gifts that relate to student programming for the superintendent to write procedures around. And following this policy, which ensures that they align with existing board policy and strategic planning documents, things of that nature. And then the school board would immediately get anything that has any of sort of controversy as it's described, or may present a longer term financial or operational burden, or is related specifically to a facilities shift, that is within the board's purview. The intention is sort of the long-term stewardship of those pieces, whereas the assumption is, hopefully it's your assumption too, that the superintendent is in a better position to work with folks around programming, educational programming that comes with that. It does mean, however, that on the programming side, if I'm asked to think through some gifts based on the procedures that are developed relative to a policy of this nature, that I'm looking for board policy that relates to the nature of the gift. And if I don't have that, and I don't have guidance about where the board stands in some of these areas, then I would need to ask you to develop that in order to be able to properly determine whether the gift is in alignment with the board's governance agenda. So, which we've worked together around in the past.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, just as a hypothetical, like we spent most of the meeting about a year ago deciding, thinking, deliberating, and deciding ultimately that we didn't want to accept a certain gift for pretty specific reasons that had very little to do with the monetary value. And I don't really see a compelling case for taking that kind of deliberation power away from the board.
In that specific case, that would come to you still because it is a facilities request. So that would have come to you anyway. That's not a student programming request. An example of something that might not come your way would be if there's somebody who would like to donate to an international travel fund to enable more students who might not be able to afford to take opportunities to that are optional, to travel abroad because you're an excellent language student. I would be very happy to report about that, but that is not necessarily something that would come to the board for a decision making, unless it met with any of the criteria that were related in Section 5. So really, maybe it's thinking about Section 5 that would be, the litmus test as to whether or not that indicates, it's possible, Ron, that if you had a threshold, say, of every gift that was over $10,000, that you might have 50 of them. So it's important to understand what the board can manage as a workload as well, and being able to attend to donors, the nature of gifts shifts and changes in conversations and so on and so forth. So it's thinking about that balance from that perspective as well.
Yeah, Steve. I'm trying to think about this in terms of facilities use. I know that policy is very specific about you can't discriminate against anybody for religious reasons or political reasons, or does this final clause in there saying that the school district can reject a gift for any reason put us into any kind of legal jeopardy by saying, yeah, no, we don't want anything from, I don't know, the White Nationalist Party of New England, or do we then open up ourselves and say, well, that was arbitrary and you did that, you are prejudiced against a particular group? And it seems like that would be the same thing with donations as it would be with facilities use.
I think our legal opinion is essentially that school districts are public entities, and therefore they should not adhere to a specific political affiliation more than another political affiliation. And so the policy reflects that importance. I think there are likely other policies, such as the facilities use policy or a forthcoming flag policy or other policies, our instructional materials policy, educational programming, that would likely carry the guidance that also will be vetted legally, that will guide whether or not a gift is appropriate to accept, both at the superintendent's level and at the board level. So you would be nested in policy or case law regarding your approval or denial of any gift. It's part of our responsibility. By the way, there's just one other typo or one other thing that was not, I don't think, supposed to make it into this draft. It's on number 5B.
Yeah.
At the last bullet, I think, or unique community concern was supposed to come off of the end of that sentence.
That's my bad. That was Ellen's suggestion. Yeah.
Meaning it's sort of redundant, so it wasn't needed.
Oh, yeah. I just
how we got to the $250,000 threshold.
Say that again.
Where do we get the $250 from?
I think the thinking about that, which certainly is a piece of thinking, right, is that if a campaign were to begin that was a large campaign, whether it was, like, for example, when the Seats and Eats, is that the right way to say that? Seats and Eats campaign, was done, that erected the stands and snacks and whatnot near the main field at MUHS. Any kind of campaign that's put together is probably going to be around that level, if it's of any size, to do anything, so that it really was meant to say something of size and substance that would attract a yet another level of scrutiny should be coming to the board level, without ensuring that something that things are more expensive now. I think something that may seem more routine doesn't have to come to the board level unnecessarily in order to hang it up in some way. So it's not wedded to that. It was really just that was what it was meant to convey at that level, and so that's why it made it into the draft as it is.
Mary Heather.
I'm curious whether, because I'm thinking, well, what is the threshold amount for facilities to seek board approval for
$40,000.
$40,000?
And it's a small purchase from 40 to 250, and then after that it's a large.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I mean, so it seems like is it aligned with that? It seems like you want it to be somewhat consistent, I suppose, with.
Yeah, it's at the threshold between a small purchase and then large purchase.
So like anything larger than that would need to go to bid, is what you're.
For 40,000 for facilities, it has to go to bid.
There's different rules at 250 with regards to how the bids are gathered, advertised, read, what you
right.
You have
but
to
either way, so if it's 40,000, it comes to the board for our approval to initiate the bid process. Correct.
Competitive bidding, but not board approval. Board approval.
Yeah, I think
so
board approval at
250.
That's what I remember. It just seems like it would make sense to have it all be consistent.
Yeah.
Like if it's going to come to the board.
Well, also, if somebody wanted to donate an electric bus, right? There's a $70,000 piece, right? So, you could say, well, that's a facility, so, that might not be a good example. I was emphasized used in my mind, right? So there could be, some, they're expensive now, you could, 3 of our wonderful families might get together and put $20,000 each in a pot to really support our students, and all of a sudden, you have an amount of money, that is, that probably could be worked out at the operational level. There is an amount then that feels like, all right, this is a project that is a long project. It's going to have a significant footprint, and that definitely needs to come before the board before it gets going.
It just seems like the policy has that structure, that sort of decision tree in place to allow us to evaluate that.
I do think that, similar to the D6 policy and the C30 policy, right? Wherever we begin, we're going to be reviewing how it went and how it's going and what we think, and we will learn after the first year and the policy. If I had any question about anything, I would immediately go to the policy committee and say, all right, here's what I'm thinking about this. Is this consistent with how you are thinking about the implementation of it? And we're going to have to find our way. And it could be that mirroring that the bid approval level is not where we want to be. We want to be somewhere else. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry to speak so many times on this. I just have a thought I want to get out. And it's about the word or the phrase specific political affiliation at the end of 5A, the final bullet. Because I think that doesn't cover a whole range of things that the board might want to consider when we're trying to shape this policy. Dr. Baker, you mentioned, and I thought it was a good example, kind of someone wants to donate an international travel fund for students to go study abroad in a certain language. And also imagine like a tech billionaire offering money that will encourage students to, drop out of college, right? So and I don't think, I really do trust the people that are in the ACSD administration at the moment. I work with you all, and I really appreciate your opinions. I know that that's not the kind of thing that you guys would be into. But if this is a policy, I know that we can change it whenever we want to. But I think that the specific political affiliation, to me, doesn't feel broad enough. Because that could apply to things that weren't just facilities.
I think that the part that I would be using to broaden the conversation in the way that I think you're pointing to, Ron, is the last bullet says pose no legal, ethical, or operational concerns or promote the perception of a specific political affiliation. Also, the third bullet are in alignment with current board policy or strategic plan documents. So I could imagine that the second example that you used, I would say, I don't think that's in alignment with our strategic plan documents, and I think it could arguably pose ethical concerns. And so I am not comfortable approving that at my level, and so therefore I would go down one and I would say, okay, that is something that I could put before you so that you understand that there is a donor and this is what the donor wishes to do. And if you believe in your judgment that it is, ethically acceptable, in accordance with your documents, that's up to you. But I would not be making that decision at the superintendent's level. So I agree that it is broader in that regard. I don't know if that language is broad enough for you, but that would be that. Those are bullets that I think would be working together.
I don't want to get too much of our time. It seems like I'm the only one for whom this is problematic, so I think I'll just table it.
I think that the thing that is bothering you, which I understand, is like, is there a way in which something that we should know about, we will not know about it because of this policy? That's sort of what your concern is. And I think I have the same concern, but I think this policy makes it more likely we will know about it. I guess that's my personal feeling, especially because none of us had heard of any gift before last year's flag policy or flag issue, right? We just, at least I was never aware of it. And I think what this does is make it, there's a system in place where we are presented with a gift that's obviously different than sort of a very small and just small donation. that Wendy, the superintendent, would go through a process and be like, all right, is this something that should go to the board? And I think that the things you're talking about would all be caught in this net, personally. However, your exact example makes me think of potentially adding something like corporate or something. Like we occasionally during these meetings we would entertain sort of examples of like, what if we were the, Elon Musk parking lot of ACSD, or what if, those kinds of things, which would connote not only a potential political issue, debacle, whatever, but also maybe a corporate, or we'd be sponsored all of a sudden by an entity, which I don't know if that particular thing is captured in here.
Robin and Mary Heather, then Ann.
Well, Ron, I hear what you're saying. I've been looking at all of our other policies because I have yet to read all of them. But I think you're also going into like the conflict of interest and what that would be. And it looks like we only have it for us. So I don't know if that's something that Vermont school boards have, like a more broader conflict of interest policy, or it starts tipping into like other policy too, I think, which makes it tricky.
Yeah, just with respect to Jamie's comment about corporate interest, I mean, I think one of the things that, we end up doing, and I'm sure the policy committee has spent hours and hours of doing, sort of, contemplating these test runs, like, okay, let's suppose we had this, someone shows up with this. And I guess one of the things that I'm just wondering about right now is if like some corporation, let's say an ed tech corporation, comes to ACSD and offers, you guys can do a pilot with this equipment or this, software or whatever, and it is in fact some kind of in-kind gift or whatever that obviously comes with it, a corporate interest. Like, how would this policy suss out that potential gift? I
mean, number 5 is the place, right? As well as, sort of to Robin's point, I think this is what you were saying. Whatever of the surrounding policies there are, and I think you don't, for example, you don't have a policy on ed tech use, right? You don't necessarily, you haven't thought about that, right? There, I could see a scenario where, it would be immediately dismissed out of hand. I could see a scenario where it would be entertained and looked for policy guidance. If there is none, I need policy guidance to determine whether this is okay. I could also see a situation in which it is unethical, and I can say, okay, this is not, and it also produces an undue burden financially for the maintenance of said thing, in that way. So now any kind of thing that you're talking about like that is probably also over the threshold of dollars, that would be, would come, to the board. So I think there are enough triggers in here, especially when we add in other policies that might relate to specific pieces, and it puts some pressure on you to get your policies in place that reflect your values, that you believe should be in place, so that it isn't just around who's on the board or who is the superintendent. At that time, there's policy support for that work, and that is your job as the board. You're the only one that can do that. So it does put pressure on that, and that's maybe a really important conclusion relative to sort of the line of thinking that you're pushing us to take on, Ron. It's helpful.
Yeah, all of these concerns, for me, I keep going back to the number 10, the superintendent will report all gifts of $5,000 or more from any one donor annual at the end of each fiscal year. So what that means is every year we will get a report that allows us to evaluate whether this has been an appropriate policy and whether there are other policies that we should write. So to me, this as written is more than we've ever had, as far as I can tell.
For sure, true.
And gives us a chance to change the threshold or add a bullet point later.
Yeah, and to kind of build on that, I think this is a great start from my perspective. I wish there was a bit more kind of sussing out between the district and individual schools. I think there could be some more work there just to make sure everything is on the level. In some situations, like the middle school and the high school, it's pretty clear, like those gifts will benefit all students, whereas when you get to individual schools, I think there could be more to sort out there, but I think this is a great start and things that we can build on in the years to come. I do really like that, as Wendy said, I think this can offer some kind of guidance for the superintendent and forces the board to shoulder some of those more challenging conversations and kind of work through those. There was a point raised earlier about whether this could run us afoul of issues. When I look at 5B, it says it may raise legal, ethical, or promote specific political affiliation questions. And I think we are going to have to be the determiners of that and do that as we see fit. It also says in number 11 that all gifts must comply with federal law and regulations. And so I think it allows us to kind of go into spaces that as a board we may be interested in, but it also says that we have to comply with those regulations. So I think this is a great start compared to what we have. I'm also aware that it's 8:15. We still have an hour on our agenda. So I'm happy to keep this conversation going if folks would like to.
Can I just have ask one question about this?
If folks have thoughts on what I just posed.
I have just a real quick. I just want to assure everybody that at the policy committee we do spend a tremendous amount of time pondering what if scenarios.
Yes,
so be assured that does happen.
James, we'll go to James and then Jamie.
If I was going to say anything, it's that as a committee, that's exactly what we discussed, Ron. And that's how do we keep this broad enough to give ourselves leeway, specific enough that it has the triggers that we need to address. And it comes down to this policy doesn't stand alone. There are other policies that will inform and support this that together create the net that you're looking for.
Jamie.
Mary had this point a minute ago about the 40,000 thing, the 40,000 threshold for facilities to whatever. I can't tell if to me, that honestly sounds interesting, and I wonder if there's reason to make those things, like, should we change? In other words, I can't tell if you're suggesting we change 250 to 40.
No, I think they
You're not.
said that 250 is the threshold for board. Isn't that
That's when it
they
comes to the
said?
board, so it's consistent.
Oh, it's consistent.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
So
at
you're-
40, you have to go out for a competitive bid.
Yeah, but that
Okay.
doesn't involve
It
us.
doesn't involve us.
And we may, I mean, the next thing after a policy is eventually passed is that obviously then I have to develop procedures, right? And there may
Right,
be
right.
procedures at different amounts of money, right? That apply, there will be procedures for different amounts of money. You know, just like in the operations side, we have procedures that relate to different amount, how we're handling different amounts of money, either with vendors or as we're putting our own financial controls in place, so,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, are folks ready to move on in the agenda? All right. So agenda item H is our second public comment period. There are no members of the public in the room. You seeing any online, Laura?
There's one really.
All right. If you would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. We will give you the floor. All right, seeing no Zoom hands, I think we will close our second public comment period. Next on our agenda is agenda item I, which is an executive session. Do I have a motion?
It would be helpful to invite Bruce and Matt into that as well.
Yes.
And me, I suppose.
Yes, Bruce, Matt, and Wendy, please join us in that executive session if someone wants to make a motion around that.
I'll make a motion that we invite Bruce and Matt into the executive session.
Do you want me to do it from the cheat sheet?
Yes,
please.
Yes,
Okay.
With Jamie's agenda.
I move that we enter executive session for the purpose of discussing facilities contracts under provision of Title I, Section 313A3 or A2 and invite Bruce McIntyre, Wendy Baker, and Matt Carenti.
All right. Is there any discussion of this motion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. All right. And then I believe I need another motion.
No, this.
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Small miracles.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So on our agenda, we are at agenda item J.
Sorry to interrupt, I just want to make sure, just for the recording purposes, that it's 9:50 and we're out of executive session.
That's correct. We are out of executive session and on to agenda item J, potential action, authorization to initiate contract actions as needed. Are there any motions you'd like to propose?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we ask Steve to reach out to the chair of the Career Center Board to discuss the space in question from an ownership perspective and have the ability, if necessary, begin forming the negotiation panel if needed. Thank you, per section 12, arbitration and mediation, item A. Of the license, thank you. I need help, of the property and services agreement dated 9/1/2004.
All right. Is there any discussion regarding this motion? All right. No discussion in the room. Take a vote on the motion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The motion is approved. All right, that brings us to our last agenda item. Today, board reflection. Would anyone like to offer a board reflection?
Other than we had
Just, yeah, and gratitude for all the district office work. This was a tremendous amount of work to be prepared for this meeting. So thanks.
Yes, and poor Darcy.
To the whole team.
All right, is there any other board reflections? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned at 9:50.